Hi, this is Steve Hegarty from VANDER Precision Farming. Today I'm going to have a quick chat to you about analysing the data in your cane yield maps. So we've had quite a few calls in the last week about our load cell based sugarcane yield mapping solution, and quite a few people are wondering, well, what's the benefit if I do get my data post-processed and I do create a colourful yield map, then what can I actually do with it? So what I've got here is a demo field from Bundaberg, and it includes post-processed data that we have taken both the load cell readings off the harvester as well as the mill weights, and we've corrected the yields. So the first thing you can see is that our average yield in this field is 85 tonnes per hectare, and you can see the spread of the yield across the area from the graph here. So 21% coefficient of variation. So you can see that we've got some significant areas in the field, down around the 40, 50, 60 tonne per hectare, and then we've got some significant areas in the field here, over 100 tonne and even up to as high as 140 tonne per hectare, even though our field average is 85. So the first thing we would do, we'd go and ground truth that. So if you're doing multiple yield maps, we can take that out to something like Google Earth. You can load this image on your tablet. You can actually go and walk the field here and try to ascertain where what's going on. Is there anything easily accessible that might be telling you why you've got this lower yield versus higher yield? I guess the next step is if there's nothing that's particularly evident that might be driving that yield change, then we start to use other spatial data layers to help us identify what might be driving this change in yield. So what I'm going to show you today is a quick example of how we might compare a topography layer like slope or error from plane, which is an indicator of how water runs off a field, and that can show us whether maybe water logging and reduced nitrogen use efficiency that goes with that might be affecting our yield. Then I'll do another video a bit later on where we'll look at comparisons with soil types using soil EM maps. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to pull up a directional slope layer. So we've gathered elevation using RTK elevation out of the GPS system, and from that we've derived things like slope, directional slope, depressions, error from plane. So I'm going to classify the slope into desired zones. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying I want to break up my directional slope into intervals of say 0.2%, and by doing that I've now created 8 slope zones for this field. So we have some areas here that are reasonably flat, around about 0.5, and then we have some areas through here getting steeper, up over 1%. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take our yield map that we've post-calibrated, and I'm actually going to compare the two layers. So what we've done here is said that we have 8 slope zones across the bottom of this graph, coming from this first layer from topography, and then we've dropped all the yield data over the top of that. So sitting behind this yield map in about 5 metre grids is all the yield readings we've taken off the harvester, one reading a second. So you can see that we have a slope zone here, number 1, which is down around about 0.4% slope, through to the slope zone here, zone number 8, which is up about 1.7%. And what we've done is said, okay, for all the areas here that are 0.4% slope, what was the average of all the yield readings we took? And it was about 79 tonne per hectare. We go over here where our slope zone was 1.7%. The average of all the readings from that blue zone here represented 112 tonne per hectare of cane. So the next thing we're going to do is show the area of the field that makes up these 8 slope zones. So we've added this blue line which represents our hectares. So the majority of hectares in this field is actually made up by slope zone number 4 and the zones each side of it, 2, 3 and 5, 6. So we can see that the majority of the field is falling here around about the 84 tonne per hectare, but we can see that as the slope increases to 1.1, 1.3, average yield in those slope zones is increasing from the low 80s up to the high 80 tonne per hectare, low 90 tonne per hectare. The next thing that we can do is actually do some financial analysis, because this yield data here has been post-calibrated. We can make some financial assumptions. So everyone's going to have a different set of numbers depending on the season and depending on where you're farming. Today I'm just going to make an assumption of say $45 per tonne of stick cane, and I'm going to make an assumption of $2,500 per hectare for variable input costs such as land prep, fertilising, herbicide, harvesting, etc. And that's then giving me an assumed number of $1,300 per hectare of gross margin across this whole field. So what I can then do is actually look at the response here. Instead of just as tonnes, we can look at it as a response financially in gross margin. So again, we can see that the majority of our field here is probably making us around about $1,200–1,300 per hectare of gross margin based on those assumptions I put in, whereas here in the slightly steeper slope zones we're probably making around about an extra $500 per hectare of gross margin. And obviously we can see here where our yields have gone much higher, there's a whole lot more gross margin being made, but they are representing a very small area of the field. So this is what we do with the customer. If we saw this trend happening over a couple of seasons, this gives us the ability to do some return on investment assumptions if we build confidence that in this example field drainage might be having an effect year on year on yield. We can start to look at return on investment by getting earthworks done either by a contractor or by kitting out your own machine. So that gives you an idea of what we can do with a post-calibrated yield map by comparing it with topography, and we might do another video where we look at some comparisons against soil types. Any questions, don't be afraid to give any of the guys at VANDER a call. Thank you.